The director of the Fine Arts Museum was brutally murdered. Because the couple fought like cats and dogs, the prosecution immediately listed Min Jae-woo as the prime suspect. However, 4 months passed and the prosecutors still hadn't identified the killer. This immediately became a target of public criticism. Everyone suspected the culprit was the son of a National Assembly member who was receiving special treatment. Therefore, the prosecution announced that they would summon Min Jae-woo to court again. To restore their credibility, the chief prosecutor decided to appoint a seasoned prosecutor named Young Ju to the case. Meanwhile, Jin Sung, a zealous police officer, always had his devoted younger brother looking after him. That day, while busting illegal gambling dens, he inadvertently arrested his own mother. Upon learning the woman was the officer's mother, 2 gamblers immediately took her hostage to make their escape. Unfortunately for them, Jin Sung overpowered both of them in a flash. However, because he hit them too hard, one of the gamblers suffered a broken nose and required surgery. Back at the police station, Jin Sung's mother scolded him for ruining her good fortune, as she had just won the equivalent of 3 months of his police salary. However, Jin Sung was truly perplexed. His mother wasn't short of money, so why was she gambling? Just then, the captain arrived with a report. The hospital bill for the injured gambler alone was 10 million won. Added to that, he had assaulted someone, an act that constituted battery. And so, the police officer who had busted the gamblers ended up in a holding cell. Meanwhile, prosecutor Hee-ju had discovered that Min Jae-woo's wife had a younger lover, and that Min Jae-woo had previously assaulted this man. Therefore, she strongly suspected that Min Jae-woo had killed his wife out of jealousy. However, Min Jae-woo seemed completely unconcerned by this suspicion. He even went so far as to jokingly comment on Hee-ju's attractiveness, infuriating her. Seeing this, Young Ju immediately entered the interrogation room and requested to take over the case. Young Ju discovered that between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. on the night of the murder, Min Jae-woo was at a nightclub. However, there was no evidence proving he had been there for the entire 4 hours. Worse, the nightclub had a secret back door accessible only to VIP guests. Naturally, there were no security cameras there. Suspecting this, she paid particular attention to Seo Hyun, who had provided Min Jae-woo's alibi. After testifying, this woman had left the country, as if fleeing. Young Ju learned that Seo Hyun had returned that morning and immediately summoned her to the prosecutor's office. At the same time, Seo Hyun was being interrogated in a different room. She not only repeatedly insisted that Min Jae-woo was in a private room, but also taunted the interrogating prosecutor, calling him old-fashioned and claiming he'd never set foot in a nightclub. Furthermore, she provided a video, claiming it was filmed by Min Jae-woo at 11:17 p.m. The prosecutor immediately informed Young Ju about this. But Min Jae-woo, with just a glance, knew the prosecution hadn't found any concrete evidence. He remarked, "Those platitudes might work on others, but they won't work on me." Moreover, he expressed his hope that the police would catch the real killer. Young Ju reminded him that the video didn't show him, so it couldn't prove he filmed it. Upon hearing this, Min Jae-woo made a remark and left. Hee-ju declared she was withdrawing from the case. As Young Ju stepped out of the interrogation room, she encountered a man. This man was her senior, Prosecutor Cha Young-woon. He was worried that Hee-ju wouldn't be able to solve the case, given the suspect's constant mockery. But Young Ju didn't want him interfering in her case. At this point, Young-woon revealed that, before the murder, the killer had injected the victim with an anesthetic and then hung the body over the railing as if airing clothes. Young Ju had already discovered that this type of anesthetic was commonly used in dental clinics for sleep dentistry. She intended to investigate the drug management records at Min Jae-woo's dental clinic, but her superiors wouldn't sign the search warrant. Therefore, Young-woon suspected that this was connected to Min Jae-woo's assemblyman father. He advised her against pursuing the warrant and suggested she explore other avenues. But Young Ju refused Young-woon's suggestion. Meanwhile, the police had determined that Jin Sung's mother was a new gambler. Therefore, she was released shortly after. The next day, the captain informed Jin Sung that the assaulted man had dropped the charges. In other words, someone had paid the settlement fee. The settlement amounted to 10 million won. The more Jin Sung thought about it, the angrier he became, so he stormed into the man's hospital room. After some negotiation, he successfully retrieved the settlement money. Furious, he rushed home, pinned his younger brother against the wall, and demanded, Why did you agree to the settlement? Why aren't you like everyone else, begging mom and me to let you go to college, buy a car, or study abroad? Or just burn this damn house down?" It turned out that their mother favored the elder son, Jin Sung, and constantly burdened her younger son with chores. She even discouraged him from pursuing higher education. Consequently, despite his academic excellence, Jin Woo intentionally failed his graduation exams. After venting his frustration, Jin Sung turned and left. Jin Woo then told his mother he was going to Seoul for a photography exhibition, promising to return early the next day. After the photography exhibition, Jin Woo went to a cafe. He slowly ascended the stairs and didn't leave until much later. Early the next morning, a cafe employee discovered a body on the second floor. Upon hearing the news, Young Woon immediately rushed to the crime scene. After investigating the victim's condition, he was certain that the killer's modus operandi was identical to the case Young Ju was handling. The body was also hung over the railing like laundry. What a coincidence! Young Woon reported both cases to the deputy prosecutor. Based on the available clues, he suspected a serial killer. Therefore, he proposed combining the two cases for investigation, promising it wouldn't cause any trouble. He also requested the formation of an investigative team, finally gaining the deputy prosecutor's support. However, unexpectedly, Young Ju immediately confronted him after hearing the news. She felt that her case had been snatched away. Young Woon explained that within the past 4 months, 2 murders had occurred with identical methods, from the anesthetic used to the body's disposal. This suggested either Korea was suddenly overrun with psychopathic criminals, or they were dealing with a serial killer. Therefore, it wouldn't be appropriate to insist that Min Jae-yu was the culprit. Although Young Ju agreed with his reasoning, she chose to withdraw from the case and return to her mother's home in the countryside. It's worth mentioning that Young Ju and the 2 Jin Sung brothers had grown up together. The investigative team then brought in a blood analyst. He explained that, aside from gender, the victims shared no common characteristics. The crime scenes were all easily accessible public places, suggesting an incredibly audacious perpetrator. However, there hadn't been any similar murders in the past 10 years. Judging by the wounds, the blood analyst deduced that the perpetrator possessed highly skilled techniques. After hearing the analyst's opinion, Officer Young reported that no suspicious individuals were found on surveillance footage, and there were no witnesses. The investigative team also found traces of salt and food powder on the knife used on the second victim. Upon learning that the murder weapon was made of Japanese steel, typically used for sashimi knives, Young Woon suggested investigating not only ordinary knives, but also those used for preparing seafood and sashimi. Officer Young T suspected the perpetrator might be a skilled food prepper or a top chef, as ordinary households rarely used such knives. Soon after, they found Yoon Bile's cooking videos. In the video, she displayed a set of knives, and Min Jae-yu also appeared in the video. Young Woon decided to purchase an identical set to conduct a simulated experiment. The National Forensic Service quickly produced an assessment report. The results showed a perfect match in the wound depth, the cut surface shape, and the knife components. So, Young Woon ordered a search of Yoon Bile's house to confirm the murder weapon. Young T suggested sharing this good news with Young Ju, but Young Woon insisted he would tell her personally. It turned out Young Woon and Young Ju had feelings for each other in college. However, due to their differing social statuses, Young Ju didn't want to be accused of social climbing, so they ultimately parted ways. Back in the present, Young Woon traveled to the countryside, but couldn't reach Young Ju. He went for a walk by the sea and encountered Jin Woo fishing. Young Woon sprained his ankle, and the two returned to the house to treat the injury. There, Young Woon noticed a set of knives in the kitchen but didn't pay them much attention, preoccupied with Young Ju not answering his calls. Jin Woo then realized he knew Young Ju. A while later, Young Ju and Jin Sung returned. She formally introduced Young Woon to the Jin Sung brothers. He was a top graduate of Seoul Law School, had passed the bar exam, and was the top student at the Judicial Research and Training Institute with a 100% case win rate. He was also known as a noble among prosecutors at the Supreme Prosecutor's Office and the only son of the Jinjin Corporation, the top contributor to society for 10 consecutive years. After the introductions, Young Woon told Young Ju he needed her help to prove Min Jae-yu's guilt and asked her to return to the investigation. Young Ju readily agreed. However, an unexpected issue arose during the interrogation. Seo Hyun insisted that one knife from the set was missing. Young Tae confirmed this detail in the case file. This meant they couldn't charge Min Jae-woo. Meanwhile, sitting on the roof of the house, Jin Woo recalled Young Ju's description of Young Woon, his eyes filled with hatred. That evening, while Jin Sung was having dinner, their aunt couldn't reach her daughter. At that moment, he received a call about a death and rushed to the crime scene. Judging by the victim's condition, it was clearly the work of the serial killer. The victim was the aunt's daughter. Upon hearing the news, Young Woon and Young Ju immediately returned to the scene. Due to its unique nature, the case was transferred to Seoul for investigation, approved by the police commissioner. However, Jin Sung disagreed and requested to join the investigative team. Young Woon agreed that having a detective familiar with the location could be beneficial. Young Ju concurred. The next day, Jin Sung briefed everyone on the situation and said his goodbyes. His mother urged him to be careful, while Jin Woo seemed unusually worried about this high school student's murder. Jin Sung believed the perpetrator was an outsider, as their village had only seen 8 major incidents in the past 30 years, all involving fights and violence. There hadn't been a murder in 50 years. Young Ju, being from the village, agreed. Hearing this, Young Woon suggested investigating any connection between Min Jae-woo and the village. However, before he could finish, Jin Sung produced a document. It turned out that there was a luxury villa near the crime scene, owned by Min Jae-woo's father. Young Woon instructed Young Tae to investigate Min Jae-woo's alibi and inquire about the victim. The others would focus on the National Forensic Service's findings. Jin Sung went to Min Jae-woo's dental clinic and encountered an assistant who became visibly nervous upon learning Jin Sung's identity. Jin Sung questioned him about his whereabouts on the day of the murder. The assistant claimed it was the clinic's day off and that he had been home playing video games all day. At that moment, the village head sent a message saying that on the day of the murder, a delivery driver had collided with a car and taken a picture of it. Jin Sung entered the clinic and observed Min Jae-woo working on a patient. He noticed Min Jae-woo's excitement at the sight of blood. Furthermore, Min Jae-woo's preferred artwork was also quite violent. Jin Sung questioned Min Jae-woo about his whereabouts between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the night of the murder. Just then, a woman entered and claimed she had been with Min Jae-woo at a Seoul hotel that night. Jin Sung deliberately mentioned Seo Hyun, and as the two argued, he secretly filmed Min Jae-woo's two-timing behavior. Infuriated, the woman admitted she hadn't been with him on the night of the murder. This was presented as evidence of the suspect evading questioning, attempting to flee or destroy evidence, justifying a lawful arrest. Jin Sung arrested Min Jae-woo. Young Ju and Young Woon were informed of the arrest and expressed concern that he had overstepped. If Min Jae-woo's lawyer sued for unlawful arrest, the investigation could be jeopardized. Jin Sung revealed his key piece of evidence. The car the delivery driver hit on the night of the murder was Min Jae-woo's. Young Ju immediately confronted Min Jae-woo with the photo. He claimed he had lent his car to someone else and was in Seoul at the time, but couldn't recall who he had lent it to. He also claimed he had been live streaming at the time, which was corroborated by evidence of a live broadcast. Min Jae-woo's lawyer provided them with an alibi and stated that his client was under so much pressure from the investigation that he was experiencing short-term memory loss and couldn't remember who he had lent the car to. Jin Sung remained suspicious of Min Jae-woo, especially given the presence of his car near the crime scene on the night of the murder, dismissing it as too much of a coincidence. Meanwhile, Young Tae, while interviewing the victim's classmates, was spotted by Jin Woo. Jin Woo rushed home, retrieved a box, and went to burn it. Young Tae witnessed this and reported it to Young Woon. It turned out Jin Woo and the victim were close friends. They had arranged to meet at the crime scene an hour before the murder. Jin Woo had called the victim 10 minutes later. Young Tae visited Jin Woo's workplace, where he was preparing sashimi with a knife nearly identical to the murder weapon. This made Jin Woo the prime suspect. When evidence against Min Jae-woo surfaced at Jin Woo's place, Jin Sung furiously confronted Young Woon, demanding to know why they suspected his brother. Young Woon explained that Jin Woo had been at the art museum where the first murder occurred, which Jin Woo himself had admitted. He also lacked an alibi for the night of the murder. Secondly, Jin Woo had also been at the cafe where the second murder took place, and the third murder occurred in Jin Woo's village. Furthermore, Jinwoo's name appeared on a list of people who had purchased from a recently apprehended drug dealer, although the buyer's identity hadn't been confirmed. Young-woon didn't believe in so many coincidences. Crucially, the murder weapon found in Jinwoo's possession matched the stolen knife. Jin-sung argued that simply possessing a similar knife didn't make someone a murderer. Young-ju also insisted Jinwoo couldn't be the killer. Jin-sung added that investigations should be based on evidence, not feelings, and that he knew his brother best. Young-woon objected to letting emotions cloud their judgment, dividing the team. Jin-sung accused Young-woon of using his brother as a scapegoat to quickly close the case, afraid to pursue Min Jae-woo because of his father's political influence, and even suggested collusion. Hearing this, Young-woon angrily retorted, "You should be a righteous detective, not stirring up trouble like this. Instead, focus your energy on finding evidence to prove your brother's innocence." With that, the two began to argue fiercely. Young-woon's heart rate monitor suddenly blared an alarm. He looked as if he were about to suffocate, clearly suffering from some kind of medical condition. After he left the office, Young-ju followed him out. She shared Jin-sung's sentiment. Having watched Jin-woo grow up, she knew him to be an incredibly kind person, incapable of being a serial killer. Young-woon told her the truth would speak for itself. Early the next morning, Jin-sung took his brother's knife to the National Forensic Service to have it re-examined against the simulated murder weapon. At the same time, Jin-woo's interrogation began. The surveillance cameras at the scenes of the first and second murders were both malfunctioning. In other words, Jin-woo had no alibi. Regarding the knife, he claimed he had bought it online from someone named Lee Mon-kai. This same person had also arranged to meet him at the exhibition hall and the cafe, but never showed up. After investigating the online purchase records, everything Jin-woo said proved to be true. However, the transaction date information wouldn't be available until the bank opened the following day. At this point, Jin-sung's mother and her boyfriend arrived to testify. Her boyfriend, Mr. Chu, was a doctor. He recalled that on the night of the high school girl's murder, he had been playing cards with Jin-woo and his mother from 7 p.m. until 1 a.m. Furthermore, the seating arrangement he drew matched Jin-woo's exactly. Dr. Chu also revealed that Jin-woo had stepped out once during their card game. Apparently, Jin-woo's mother had gotten hungry, so while making ramen for them, he had slipped out to meet the girl. However, he received a call from his mother on the way, and called the girl to cancel their meeting. She didn't answer, and he simply returned home. All three of them gave identical testimonies regarding this matter. After the interrogation, Young-ju urged Young-woon to release Jin-woo, arguing that 20 minutes simply wasn't enough time to commit the murder and stage the scene so meticulously. Young-woon countered that human memory is fallible, and it was possible that Jin-woo had been gone longer than he thought. Young-ju practically pounded her chest, guaranteeing that arresting her brother wasn't necessary for the investigation. Unexpectedly, Young-woon accused her of letting personal feelings cloud her professional judgment as a prosecutor. Shortly after, Jin-sung returned to the office with the report from the National Forensic Service. The report concluded that the wounds on the victim were inconsistent with Jin-woo's knife, as he had a unique way of sharpening it. Finally, Jin-woo was released. He and Jin-sung temporarily stayed at Young-ju's house, planning to return home the next day. However, Young-tae had made a new discovery. Young-woon immediately sought out Young-ju and Jin-sung. It turned out that Jin-woo's deleted phone data had been recovered. It contained numerous photos he had taken of women's ankles. This scene had been witnessed by Jin-woo from the upper floor. Moreover, the items he had burned that day were those very photos. The reason behind this stemmed from a childhood incident. Jin-woo's mother had taken his hand, promising to buy him his favorite ice cream, and told him to stay put. But she didn't return for a long time. Frightened, Jin-woo got up and searched for her. He suddenly tripped and fell, and all he could see were the ankles of various passers-by. Although his mother eventually brought him home, the incident left an indelible psychological scar. This explained his clandestine photography habit. However, these photos could not be used as evidence of murder. Upon hearing this, M speculated that being abandoned by his mother had led Jin-woo to resent women, ultimately driving him to murder. However, Ji countered that even a psychological complex couldn't directly prove he was the killer. Just then, Jin-sung entered the office with a crucial new lead. Seo Hyun had admitted that she and Jin Woo hadn't been together on the night of the murder. Instead, she had been with a rookie actor at a nightclub from 10 p.m. to 12:30 am. In other words, the person who filmed the video used as evidence was this actor. Jin Sung then checked the nightclub's surveillance footage and confirmed the actor's presence. This proved that Min Jae-woo was not at the nightclub when the murder occurred. Young Woon immediately instructed M to obtain an arrest warrant and apprehend Min Jae-woo. The next morning, Jin Sung arrived at Min Jae-woo's clinic with the warrant. However, Min Jae-woo, seemingly tipped off, had already boarded a flight to the United States. Upon learning this, Young Woon went directly to the chief prosecutor's office. He argued that with a prime suspect fleeing the country amidst a confidential investigation, his father, a National Assembly member, couldn't possibly be uninvolved. The leak had to have come from someone on the inside. The chief prosecutor was furious. It turned out a reporter had already broken the story. Young Woon immediately suspected his friend, Kai Young. Returning to the investigative team, he decided to fly to the US to apprehend Min Jae-woo himself. Just then, Kai Young arrived at the office. Jin Sung grabbed him by the collar, berating him for his unethical and reckless reporting. However, the leak had actually come from Hee-ju, the chief prosecutor's daughter. Young Woon quickly intervened to stop Jin Sung. Infuriated by the assault, Kai Young tried to retaliate. Jin Sung dodged, and Kai Young's fist landed squarely in Young Woon's chest. His medical device blared its alarm. The altercation finally ended, but not before Young Woon's mother witnessed the scene. Young Woon's family had been against his career as a prosecutor due to its inherent dangers, but they hadn't been able to dissuade him. Kai Young appeared to have a close relationship with Young Woon's family and visited them frequently. Young Woon's mother couldn't fathom whether Kai Young's journalistic zeal or a sense of inferiority towards her son had motivated him to publish the article. Soon after, as Young Woon prepared to leave for the US to arrest Min Jae-woo, the case took a sharp turn. The actor who had provided the alibi recanted his testimony. He confessed that he had been hired by Seo Hyun to give false testimony. The video had been filmed by someone else, but Korean law didn't penalize extrajudicial statements for fabricating evidence. Consequently, the actor was released by his lawyer. Young Ju speculated that the actor, having a promising career, couldn't afford the negative publicity of a scandal with Seo Hyun, forcing him to reveal the truth despite the threats. They also discovered that the owner of the Lee Mon Kai account was Lee Min Jin, the sister of a nurse at Min Jae-woo's clinic. Simultaneously, Young Tae located an internet cafe with the IP address linked to Lee Mon Kai. The address was very close to the nurse's residence. Jin Sung decided to investigate the nurse first. Jin Sung and Young Tae quickly arrived at the nurse's house, where they discovered numerous photos of ankles, several vials of anesthetic, and a knife resembling the murder weapon. The nurse's assistant was named Lee Jun. He was a former chef with 2 prior convictions for sex offenses. His profile matched the killer's. Jin Sung also received a photo from the village head. On the day of the 3rd murder, the village entrance camera had captured an image of Lee Jun. The evidence pointed squarely at him. Young Woon instructed Young Tae to obtain an emergency warrant. The serial murder investigation became public. However, Young Ju still felt something was amiss. Soon, wanted posters were plastered everywhere. Major television networks broadcast warnings to the public. Lee Jun stood inside a building, staring intently in one direction. He seemed to have made a crucial decision. A car was parked in the direction he was facing. The mysterious occupant of the car claimed to have seen the killer. After receiving the tip, Jin Sung and Young Tae rushed to the hotel where Lee Jun was hiding. The room was eerily silent. A plane ticket and a suicide note lay on the table. Jin Sung went upstairs and discovered that Lee Jun had hanged himself. Handwriting analysis confirmed the suicide note was his. It contained a confession to all 3 murders. Jin Sung was puzzled. Why would someone planning to escape write a suicide note and kill themselves? Could he have been colluding with Min Jae-woo? Young Woon, however, believed the detailed confession perfectly matched their evidence, concluding that they had solved the serial murder case. The prosecution quickly held a press conference. Lee Jun was declared the true culprit. Kai Young questioned how the prosecution could definitively identify him as the murderer without a final confession, given his death. Young Woon stated they had irrefutable evidence. Meanwhile, back in his village, Jin Woo watched the press conference, lost in thought. Midst the celebratory atmosphere, Young Woon felt a pang of sadness. He hypothesized, what if Lee Jung hadn't surfaced? What would have become of the prosecution and police in charge of the case? Would Jin Woo still be considered a suspect? Young Ju had no words of comfort. Back home, Young Woon's parents urged him to resign from the prosecution and pursue an MBA in the US. The family's future rested on his shoulders. Whether he liked it or not, as their son, he had to bear this responsibility. Young Woon agreed to comply with their arrangements once he decided to resign on his own terms. The following day, Jin Sung was promoted and transferred to Seoul for his work on the serial murder case. Unbeknownst to them, this had been prearranged. Young Woon had previously undergone coronary artery surgery. During the following months, he had experienced 3 episodes of arrhythmia and 1 instance of dyspnea. Doctors estimated an 85% chance of heart failure, requiring surgery within the year at the latest. Young Woon's mother put her long-held plan into action. She arranged for Young Woon's subordinate, Captain Kim, to retire, specifically instructing him to choose a rainy day to drive to Jin Woo's village and wait. Meanwhile, after his promotion, Jin Sung intended to return to celebrate with Jin Woo. But the chief suddenly invited him and Young Tae to dinner. Go was swamped with work, preventing both of them from returning home that day. They agreed to meet in the village the next morning. That night, as the rain poured down, the mysterious figure remained in the village. The usually punctual chief was late. Jin Woo received a call from his mother. Dr. Chu craved cold sashimi, but they had no ingredients. Jin Woo braved the storm to gather some from the sea. As Jin Woo drove off, the mysterious figure followed him. Meanwhile, Jin Sung's mother, Go's mother, and Dr. Chu were at a karaoke bar. Dr. Chu deliberately kept them from leaving, seemingly waiting for something. Jin Woo, having gathered the ingredients, was intercepted by the mysterious figure upon his return. The figure attacked Jin Woo, knocking him unconscious. Jin Sung's mother received a call upon returning home. Simultaneously, Jin Sung's dinner concluded. He received a call from his mother, informing him of Jin Woo's accident. Due to the severity of Jin Woo's injuries, the village doctor recommended immediate transfer to Jinjin Hospital. Jin Sung asked Young Ju to pull some strings for expedited care, but she couldn't reach Young Woon. Desperate, she contacted Young Woon's mother. Initially reluctant, she readily agreed after Go explained the situation, emphasizing that Jin Woo was a colleague's brother. That night, Jin Woo was transferred to Jinjin Hospital. Doctors determined that despite high blood pressure, his vital signs were stable. However, severe head trauma had caused cerebral edema. Prolonged edema could lead to increased intracranial pressure and brain death. The only treatment was extensive decompressive craniotomy to relieve the pressure. The surgery was successful. Young Woon's mother cautioned that Jin Woo's recovery remained uncertain. If his condition didn't improve in the coming days, brain death was a possibility. She stressed this was distinct from a vegetative state, which held the potential for miraculous recovery. Brain death, however, constituted medical death. Overcome with remorse, Jin Sung's mother lamented her unequal treatment of her sons, favoring the elder with fresh meals while the younger received leftovers, making him wear hand-me-downs, and other instances of preferential treatment. Jin Sung, however, remained composed. He didn't believe his brother's injuries were accidental. He set out to investigate the scene. As Jin Sung left the hospital, Young Ju revealed everything to Young Woon. Ashamed of his earlier suspicion, Young Woon asked his mother if there was any way to save Jin Woo. Meanwhile, Jin Sung visited the accident scene. His superiors informed him that Jin Woo's case was closed. The first to report the incident was a patrolling officer, and the heavy rain had washed away any potential evidence. However, as Jin Sung was leaving, something caught his eye, a glint of light. He followed it and found a button. At the same time, the chief prosecutor rewarded Young Woon with a year of overseas training for his contribution to solving the serial murders. Although reluctant, Young Woon obeyed the order. Leaving the prosecutor's office, he ran into Kai Young, who, having heard about the training opportunity from Hee-ju, expressed his admiration. As Young Woon walked away, Kai Young's expression changed. Elsewhere, Young Ju encouraged Jin Sung to remain hopeful about Jin Woo's recovery. She revealed that her father had been abusive towards her and her mother. One day, unable to bear the misery any longer, she had contemplated suicide. Jin Woo had saved her, solidifying their deep bond. That night, Young Woon visited Young Ju at the hospital to say goodbye, but some words remained unspoken. He suspected his mother had privately arranged the training opportunity with the chief prosecutor. Young Woon was the only son in 4 generations, a single male heir in his family line. His father reminded him not to forget his unique position. That same night, Young Woon's mother visited Jin Woo's room. His vital signs remained normal. Jin Sung, attempting to visit his brother, was stopped by a guard at the door, denied entry without a doctor's permission. Young Woon's mother, emerging from Jin Woo's room, claimed that for the patient's best care, no visitors were allowed, not even family. Young Ju noticed Jin Woo was receiving special treatment, exceeding the hospital's usual protocols. She felt it best to avoid conflict with the hospital. Neither of them knew that Jin Woo was near death. His pupils were dilated and unresponsive to light. Brain death was the preliminary diagnosis. The attending physician suggested further resuscitation, but Young Woon's mother wouldn't wait. She declared Jin Woo brain dead. The deputy director delicately broached the subject of organ donation, a common practice in brain death cases, offering a chance to save lives and leave a legacy of hope. Young Woon's mother readily agreed, revealing that Jin Woo had signed an organ donor agreement. Years earlier, a news story about a young man who, after a car accident, had donated his organs and saved 9 lives had deeply moved Jin Woo, prompting him to register as a donor. Jin Sung, respecting his brother's wishes, agreed to fulfill them. The following day, he and Young Woon's mother signed the organ donation agreement, excluding the brain. Jin Woo's funeral was held shortly after at the hospital. Jin Sung and Go scattered his ashes at sea. He was gone. A year passed. Young Woon returned home and encountered Min Jae-yu again, but paid him no mind. It was the anniversary of Jin Woo's death. Young Ju and Jin Sung planned to visit his grave, but Young Woon messaged Young Ju before they left. They met at a cafe. Young Woon seemed different, his face fuller, and he even offered her a drink. Due to his heart condition, he rarely drank alcohol. Young Ju inquired about his time abroad, sensing he was hiding something. He dismissed it, saying he simply wanted to enjoy a drink after so long. Young Ju reminded him it was Jin Woo's death anniversary. The conversation ended there. On the other side, Young Woon's mother, residing in a newly built apartment complex owned by the Special Corporation, selected a unit as a gift for Kai Young. She also mentioned that Chief Kim had already moved in and referred to him as family. This statement inevitably raised suspicions about a possible secret between the two. Meanwhile, Young Woon returned home after playing ball, seemingly recovered from his heart condition. That night, after performing a memorial service for Jin Woo, the two returned to Seoul. After Jin Sung dropped Young Ju off at her home, he received a text message containing a video of the night Jin Woo's accident occurred. Upon watching it, Jin Sung was stunned. The video documented his brother's murder, effectively providing eyewitness evidence. Young Ju immediately suggested verifying the video's authenticity. Shortly thereafter, National Investigation Bureau colleagues confirmed the video was real, but they couldn't identify the individuals involved. The network phone number was linked to a foreign IP address, making it impossible to trace the sender. Jin Sung returned to his hometown police station and showed his former colleagues the video of his brother's murder. He couldn't understand why the witness knew he was Jin Woo's brother and only sent the video to him. His colleagues speculated that the sender likely knew both brothers, possibly someone from their village. They suggested investigating villagers with advanced internet skills. Jin Sung also wanted to investigate any outsiders who visited the village on the day of the incident, but no one had retained surveillance footage for a year. The chief suddenly remembered guest houses and homestays, which require guest registration. Combined with their payment records, they might find a lead. Everyone agreed to thoroughly investigate this avenue. That evening, Jin Sung drove home and asked his mother if any strangers had visited the restaurant on the day of the incident. She only remembered singing karaoke with Young Ju's mother and Dr. Chu that day. Dr. Chu suddenly craved cold sashimi, prompting her to call Jin Woo. She continued with karaoke for a while before returning to the restaurant. Since Jin Woo's death, Dr. Chu seemed guilt-ridden and had given them 3 million won for memorial services. Jin Sung's mother assumed he was blaming himself, as he disappeared after giving them the money, reportedly drinking heavily. Jin Sung told his mother to comfort Dr. Chu, reminding her that they were neighbors. He then showed his mother the button he had found. She recognized it as not belonging to her youngest son, noting it was the type worn with a suit, which Jin Woo never wore. Meanwhile, Young Woon's mother, now running the Jinjin Hospital, had become a leader in pancreatic transplant surgery. The current transplant was facilitated by Chief Kim, who found the deputy director and a female surgeon specializing in the procedure. The project was funded by a foreign benefactor. However, during Young Woon's press conference, a news article questioned the motives behind the multi-billion-dollar donation to Jinjin Hospital. The article trended online, shifting public opinion from support to suspicion, with many demanding a thorough investigation. Chief Kim immediately contacted the publication to request its removal. This angered Kai Young, but then he thought of something else and laughed. Jin Sung returned to the Seoul police station and asked Young Tae, a fashion enthusiast, about the button. Young Tae immediately recognized it as extremely expensive, likely custom-made for a celebrity or prominent figure. He recalled seeing the brand in a magazine. Jin Sung immediately visited the brand store Young Tae mentioned. The salesperson explained the button was a limited edition released for their 70th anniversary, with only 5 made. Jin Sung saw a familiar name on the buyer list, Min Jae-yu. Simultaneously, Young Woon and Young Ju received invitations to a press conference about the serial murder case. Just before it began, Young Ju received a text message showing the real culprit committing the crime, along with the message, "There's another perpetrator." Realizing they couldn't publicly declare the case successfully closed, they abruptly canceled the press conference. Meanwhile, Jin Sung had been tailing Min Jae-yu all day and discovered he had 2 phones. He then received a call from Young Ju. Soon, the investigative team gathered. Young Woon analyzed that both videos were sent from foreign IP addresses and filmed with the same type of phone, suggesting a single perpetrator. Jin Sung revealed the button and explained the situation, but since Jin Woo's incident occurred after Min Jae-yu left the country, he requested verification of Min Jae-yu's records. At that moment, Young Ju noticed a clue. The perpetrator in the video wore a watch identical to Min Jae-yu's. With mounting suspicions, Young Woon and Young Ju decided to reinvestigate. However, after the chief prosecutor and deputy prosecutor learned the truth, they worried about the prosecution's reputation and the public pressure a retrial would bring. They preferred letting the real culprit remain free to avoid negative publicity, opting for quiet observation instead. Unbeknownst to them, Young Ju had recorded Young Woon's conversation with the chief prosecutor and threatened to release it if they didn't cooperate. Finally, to save face, the chief prosecutor agreed to reassemble the investigative team, but the investigation had to remain secret. The next day, the team convened. This time, however, Hee-ju, leveraging her connections, joined the team. Jin Sung confirmed that Jin Woo's incident occurred while Min Jae-yu was abroad. Young Woon stressed the priority of finding the video sender. They learned Lee Man-kai had lured Jin Woo into a transaction using a foreign network, further complicating the investigation. Young Woon also questioned why Lee Jung confessed to all the murders, suspecting he wanted the police to search his house. Soon, Young Tae and Jin Sung discovered that after Lee Jung's death, his sister paid off their mother's overdue hospital bills and bought an apartment. Upon hearing this, the sister became tense. It turned out that after Lee Jung became a criminal, he had ruined their family's finances. He suddenly reappeared one day, claiming it was his last visit, and left her a large sum of money, mentioning plans to go abroad. She continued to receive savings from him, assuming he was working on a distant fishing vessel, until she was notified of the investigation. After obtaining the sister's statement, Young Tae determined that only Min Jae-yu, among Lee Jung's associates, could have provided that much money. Suspicion grew that Min Jae-yu was a paid scapegoat. However, all transactions were in cash, leaving no evidence of bribery. Furthermore, Min Jae-yu had an alibi. During their discussion, the National Investigation Bureau's watch analysis arrived, confirming Min Jae-yu's watch matched the one in the video. Despite meeting the arrest requirements, they lacked direct evidence against Min Jae-yu. To prevent him from fleeing abroad again before an arrest warrant could be issued, Young Woon instructed Young Tae and Jin Sung to surveil Min Jae-yu, ready to apprehend him upon warrant issuance. The team perceived a change in the previously cold prosecutor, now seemingly more compassionate. However, despite their secrecy, Hee-ju leaked the investigation's direction to Kai-young, who exploited Hee-ju's affection for Young-woon to propose a deal. At the same time, Chief Kim heard a rumor that Young-woon was seeking an arrest warrant for Min Jae-yu. Concerned that Min Jae-yu might cause trouble, Young-woon's mother instructed Chief Kim to visit him with a monetary gift. Meanwhile, the investigative team still awaited approval of the arrest warrant. Jin Sung and Young Tae anxiously awaited news when they saw Chief Kim arrive at Judge B's house with 2 boxes of expensive tea. As Chief Kim entered, Min Jae-yu happened to be leaving. Chief Kim placed the gifts down, explained his visit, and conveyed Young-woon's mother's message. Judge B confidently asserted the warrant wouldn't be signed, but he smiled with satisfaction upon receiving the gift. Young Tae and Jin Sung followed Min Jae-yu to a restaurant where he dined with his girlfriend. Min Jae-yu leered at a waitress, making her so nervous she spilled water on him. As Min Jae-yu berated her, Young Tae received news the arrest warrant was denied. Unable to restrain himself, Jin Sung stormed into the restaurant and confronted Min Jae-yu about the harassed waitress. At that moment, Min Jae-yu received a text from an unknown number, warning him about the impending arrest. Before he could delete the message, Jin Sung tackled him, handcuffed him, and dragged him into the restroom, where he retaliated for the waitress by giving Min Jae-yu a beating. Young Tae finally intervened, quickly ending the brawl. Min Jae-yu was taken away in an ambulance, and Jin Sung received a call from the mysterious number. While assaulting Min Jae-yu, he had also pocketed his second phone. The mysterious caller was Kai-young. Due to Judge B's intervention, Jin Sung faced Young Ju's reprimand upon returning to the prosecutor's office. She criticized his assault on Min Jae-yu, warning of complications for the investigation. Young-woon visited Judge B to apologize, but the judge threatened to sue the National Police Agency. Back at the office, Young-woon fumed over Jin Sung's actions. Jin Sung then produced Min Jae-yu's burner phone, instantly invigorating the team. Young-woon inquired how Jin Sung unlocked the phone. Jin Sung explained he'd asked the waitress for Min Jae-yu's wine bottle, lifted his fingerprints, used 3D printing to replicate them, and successfully unlocked the phone. The phone contained only one contact number. All other messages were deleted except the last one, which Min Jae-yu hadn't managed to erase. It warned him of the impending arrest warrant. Everyone was suspicious. Since this information had leaked, Jin Sung suspected Hee-ju. Young-woon cautioned against speculation without evidence and instructed the team to analyze and recover any remaining data. The next day, the analysis revealed all data had been wiped. Hugh arrived with a document showing all the serial murder victims had received treatment at Jinjin Hospital. Young-woon, puzzled about the document's origin, learned Hugh had obtained it from Young-woon's mother. Young-ju revealed someone had used a burner phone to alert Min Jae-yu about the warrant. Upon hearing this, Hee-ju blurted out that it was Kai-young, confirming her as the leak. Young-woon immediately decided to summon Kai-young for questioning. News reports surfaced about police brutality and human rights violations during Min Jae-yu's arrest. Young-ju and Young-woon were summoned to the chief prosecutor's office. Under public pressure, the chief prosecutor prepared to close the case with Lee Jun as the culprit and disband the special investigation team. Young-woon pleaded to continue the investigation, but the chief prosecutor retorted that his only option was to resign and open a private detective agency. Young-woon agreed, on the condition that the charges against Jin Sung for excessive force be dropped. The chief prosecutor conceded. Kang Jin-x's news report about the team's disbandment enraged the chief prosecutor further. Young-woon announced the team's official disbandment. Back at the station, Jin Sung and Young Tae learned of their reassignments. Jin Sung, upset, drowned his sorrows at the cafeteria, complaining about Young-woon. Young Tae reminded him that Young-woon sacrificed the case for them. Min Jae-yu was suing for police brutality, and without Young-woon's intervention, they would have been suspended. Later, Young-woon met with Kai-young, who claimed he wrote the article due to pressure from the prosecutor general. Young-woon pointed out the article led to his 3-month suspension and the demotions of his team members, making him question his career as a prosecutor. Kai-young offered insincere consolation, then admitted to sharing the warrant news in a reporters' group chat, claiming he did so to prove he hadn't directly informed Min Jae-yu. Jin Sung and Young Tae found themselves reassigned to the Ministry of Transportation as traffic officers. While collecting their uniforms, Young-tae received a call from Young-woon, inviting them to dinner. Jin-sung felt uncomfortable with the lavish meal and attentive servants. Young-woon dismissed the staff for their comfort. After dinner, he revealed he'd secured permission for an independent investigation and planned to pursue the case discreetly. Jin-sung mentioned he'd already assigned surveillance on Min Jae-yu at the hospital. Young-woon then explained his relationship with Kai-young, revealing that Kai-young was abandoned by his mother as a child and that Young-woon's family had supported him since middle school, treating him like a brother. Kai-young had confessed to leaking the warrant information to the reporters' group chat. Jin-sung remained skeptical, while Young-ju mentioned noticing Kai-young wearing the same cologne as Young-woon and displaying an almost obsessive jealousy towards him. Young-woon found it difficult to connect these psychological observations with murderous intent. Meanwhile, Chief Kim confronted Kai-young for betraying the director's kindness. While the director understood Kai-young reporting on Young-woon's case, the articles about the hospital contained minimal facts and extensive fabrication, unbecoming of a journalist. Later, while on duty, Jin-sung received a call, abruptly abandoned his post, and drove off in his patrol car. It turned out the junior officers and the police station had already arrived in Seoul. They showed Jin-sung a photo taken by the fishing blogger on the day of the incident. Seeing the photo, Jin-sung was stunned. Confirmed by both Young-ju and Young-woon, the person in the picture was indeed Kai-young. This suggested that the perpetrator in Jin-woo's case was very likely Kai-young. Moreover, while investigating Kai-young's residence, Jin-sung heard something intriguing. A staff member who had worked for 10 years in Kai-young's apartment building told him that he had never seen any visitors. This piqued Jin-sung's curiosity, and he prepared to investigate Kai-young's apartment. However, Young-woon argued that they couldn't search Kai-young's place without a warrant. Jin-sung wasn't deterred. Since Kai-young was at the scene on the day Jin-woo was killed, even if he wasn't the murderer, he must have witnessed the entire crime. He was determined to find the culprit. Jin-sung then went to the internet cafe near Kai-young's apartment. This time, he showed Kai-young's picture to the staff. Only after seeing the skull on his shirt did one employee remember that about a year ago, this person frequented the cafe, possibly to sneak into Kai-young's apartment. Jin-sung went to Hee-ju and asked for Kai-young's door code. Hee-ju said she wasn't close enough to Kai-young to know it. Disappointed, Jin-sung turned to leave. But Hee-ju suddenly called him back and asked how she could help. Hee-ju then arranged to meet Kai-young at a bar, while Jin-sung and his superior kept the local security guard occupied, allowing Young-tae to find a locksmith to open Kai-young's door. Once inside, Jin-sung was oblivious to the fact that Kai-young was watching his every move via a phone app connected to his home security system. Entering a room, Jin-sung froze. The room was an exact replica of Young-woon's, even down to the family photo on the table. Jin-sung concluded this wasn't just neurotic behavior, it was perverse. He then entered another, even more bizarre room. It was filled with various knives and anesthetics. On the wall hung photos of the 3 victims from the serial killings. Seeing this, Jin-sung immediately worried about Hee-ju's safety. All of his actions were being observed by Kai-young. At that moment, Hee-ju, returning to her car after shopping, received a call from Jin-sung. He told her to pretend she was talking to someone else and not to hang up. If anything seemed amiss, she was to use the stun gun in her purse. Following Jin-sung's instructions, she told Kai-young she'd forgotten to buy cheese sticks and needed to go back to the convenience store. Just as she was about to get out of the car, Kai-young locked the doors. Sensing something was wrong, Hee-ju reached for her stun gun but found it missing. Kai-young then produced the stun gun, asking if she was looking for this. He'd taken it from her purse while they were at the bar. By the time Jin-sung arrived at the convenience store, Hee-ju was nowhere to be found. He frantically called her, eventually tracing her phone to a nearby trash can. Kai-young had already subdued Hee-ju with the stun gun and taken her away. Meanwhile, the chief prosecutor was visiting Young-woon's family, hoping to finalize the marriage arrangements between Young-woon and Hee-ju. Young-woon's mother was especially eager to have Hee-ju as a daughter-in-law. Just then, Young-woon burst into the room and asked everyone to leave. He informed the chief prosecutor about Hee-ju's kidnapping. Upon hearing the news, the chief prosecutor promised to mobilize all available resources to help Young-woon bring Hee-ju back safely. Young Woon's parents were in disbelief. After Young Woon left, his mother urged team leader Kim to find Kai Young before the police did. The police issued a warrant for Kai Young's arrest with a 100 million won reward, and the media began reporting on it extensively. That day, a nurse from Dr. Chu's clinic secretly brought a document to Jin Sung's mother. It contained Dr. Chu's diary entries, tracking Jin Woo's activities, which the nurse had discovered while using Dr. Chu's computer without permission. Jin Woo's mother was perplexed. Why would Dr. Chu be monitoring her son? The nurse speculated that Dr. Chu must have been in love with Jin Woo, as it was difficult to explain why he would meticulously document Jin Woo's daily life otherwise. After the nurse left, Dr. Chu arrived at Young Ju's mother's restaurant and saw the diary. Recognizing the entries as his own notes on Jin Woo, he dropped his bouquet in shock. Just as he thought his secret was out, Jin Sung's mother asked if he had feelings for Jin Woo. Misinterpreting their concern as an assumption of his homosexuality, Dr. Chu quickly clarified that he wasn't gay, but that Jin Woo reminded him of his son who lived abroad, which is why he'd taken an interest in him. Meanwhile, using the National Police Agency's computer analysis, the investigation team discovered Kai Young's logins at several locations. They also found a video on Kai Young's computer of Min Jae-yu murdering his wife and another of Jin Woo being attacked. It appeared Kai Young was the one who sent the videos to Young Woon and Young Ju, but he wasn't the serial killer, nor the person who attacked Jin Woo. So far, only Min Jae-yu's involvement in his wife's murder could be confirmed. He had alibis for the second and third murders. Jin Sung theorized that to cover up his wife's murder, Min Jae-yu had hired Lee Jung to stage the serial killings. Young Woon agreed that this was a strong possibility, and that Kai Young was the mastermind behind everything. His kidnapping of Hee-ju likely stemmed from a fear of his plan being exposed. At the hospital, Min Jae-yu, upon hearing about Kai Young's arrest warrant, panicked and called his father, intending to flee the country again. Jin Sung arrived just in time, informing Min Jae-yu that escape was impossible as he was now under a travel ban. Kai Young was a fugitive, and the police had uncovered substantial evidence linking them as accomplices. Min Jae-yu immediately called his lawyer. Jin Sung scoffed, saying the evidence was overwhelming, and he wouldn't be getting out of jail. Team leader Kim overheard their conversation. Min Jae-yu declared he would remain silent until his lawyer arrived. Jin Sung produced a listening device, inserted it into Min Jae-yu's ear, and stated that from now on, cooperation was mandatory. Seeing Min Jae-yu's continued resistance, Jin Sung presented the arrest warrant, threatening immediate imprisonment if he refused to cooperate. He added that Kai Young had kidnapped the Commissioner General's daughter, making the situation highly sensitive. Even influential figures wouldn't be able to protect him now. If they didn't catch Kai Young, Min Jae-yu would bear the full brunt of the serial murder charges alone. Defeated, Min Jae-yu reluctantly wore the listening device. Shortly after, a delivery person dressed as a courier approached Min Jae-yu's room. Seeing two police officers at the door, he turned and fled. Team leader Kim, observing this on the security camera, immediately dispatched officers to the scene. Jin Sung, alerted by his colleagues, rushed to the hospital's back entrance. He saw the fleeing delivery man and tackled him to the ground. Removing the man's mask, he realized it wasn't Kai Young. The man explained he'd received an order to deliver a cake to Min Jae-yu's room, leave it at the door, and depart immediately. He'd been paid handsomely for the task. Team leader Kim, seeing it wasn't Kai Young, signaled his officers to stand down. Furious, Jin Sung stormed into Min Jae-yu's room, demanding to know if Kai Young had just been there. Min Jae-yu claimed Kai Young had only delivered a birthday cake. It turned out that 30 minutes before the officers chased the delivery man, Kai Young, disguised as a doctor, had slipped into Min Jae-yu's room. He removed the listening device from Min Jae-yu's ear and said he needed a favor, threatening to hand over the incriminating video to the police if Min Jae-yu refused. After coercing Min Jae-yu, he left to carry out Kai Young's instructions. Min Jae-yu then requested to be discharged. The police placed Min Jae-yu under 24-hour surveillance at his home. At home, Min Jae-yu contemplated how to fulfill Kai Young's demand. He then texted someone. Shortly after, a woman arrived at Min Jae-yu's house by taxi, claiming to be visiting him. The two officers contacted Jin Sung, who instructed them to let her in after a search. Jin Sung found the whole situation puzzling. Even if Kai Young envied Young Woon, it didn't explain the elaborate scheme. Hee-ju had been holding a document before she was killed. All 3 victims had received treatment at Jinjin Hospital. Kai Young seemed to target Young Woon at crucial moments, and all signs pointed towards him. Jin Sung suspected it wasn't simply envy or inferiority, but a deeper, hidden secret between them. The officers surveilling Min Jae-yu's house saw a car approaching. They stopped the car and discovered it belonged to Chairman B. However, the car soon left. The driver claimed he was off duty, and after the officers found no one in the back seat, they let him go. Jin Sung arrived, learned about the departing car, sensed something was amiss, rushed to Min Jae-yu's room, and discovered he was gone. He immediately alerted his colleagues to intercept the car. Meanwhile, Young Ju received a call from her mother, who had sent her some seafood and instructed her to pick it up from the building manager the next day before it spoiled. Young Ju left her apartment but was immediately accosted from behind by Min Jae-yu. After Go's arrest, Young Woon interrogated Min Jae-yu's driver at the prosecutor's office. The driver feigned ignorance, claiming only that his boss had gotten out at a nearby subway station, refusing to specify which one. Even threats of aiding and abetting a criminal and obstruction of justice didn't sway him. Jin Sung decided to take over the interrogation. He began by praising the driver for reporting Chairman B's embezzlement of donations. This stunned the driver, who vehemently denied making any such report. Jin Sung then insinuated, in a cryptic tone, that someone close to Chairman B had connections to organized crime. He suggested that while the driver hadn't reported anything, Chairman B might have, and that this could lead to retaliation against the driver's family. He then got to the point, asking how Min Jae-yu managed to kidnap Young Ju. After some hesitation, the driver confessed. He had posed as a delivery driver, called Young Ju, and informed Min Jae-yu, who was hiding in the trunk, of her location. He then dropped Min Jae-yu off at the East Station. Security footage quickly identified the car Min Jae-yu had used. Min Jae-yu was now taking Young Ju to meet Kai Young. Young Ju ripped off the tape covering her mouth and, while Min Jae-yu was distracted, suffocated him with her jacket. The car swerved and crashed into a roadside barrier. Young Ju escaped and flagged down a passing car. However, as the driver turned around, she realized it was Kai Young. Having just escaped one predator, she had fallen into the clutches of another. Kai Young, noticing Min Jae-yu's phone location hadn't moved, had driven there, conveniently capturing the fleeing Young Ju. They then took her to a secluded villa. Meanwhile, the police located Min Jae-yu's car, but he wasn't inside. There were no surveillance cameras nearby. Young Woon mentioned a recently acquired villa for Min Jae-yu's chauffeur, suggesting he might be hiding there. At the villa, Min Jae-yu was resting while Kai Young showed him the original video of his drug use. Min Jae-yu's wife questioned how Kai Young could guarantee there were no copies. Kai Young insisted they were in the same boat now, and he had no reason to harm Min Jae-yu. He claimed he'd made the video as insurance against exposure, preventing Min Jae-yu from becoming the scapegoat. Min Jae-yu blamed their exposure on Kai Young's arrogance, seeing it as a sign of insecurity. Kai Young admitted to harboring resentment towards the Cha family and wanting to express it. He then fixated on hurting Young Woon, even obsessing over how to inflict the most pain, concluding that taking Go away from him would be the ultimate blow. Back with the police, Young Woon led a team to the villa. Through a window, they saw 2 figures inside. However, upon entering, they discovered the individuals weren't Min Jae-yu and Kai Young. The pair were actually at Young Woon's own villa. Min Jae-yu mocked Kai Young, saying they'd gone from a perfect crime to adding kidnapping to the mix. Kai Young, however, declared he would redefine perfect crime. They knew the perpetrators, yet couldn't catch them. That, he claimed, was a truly divine, perfect crime. He then revealed his plan to Min Jae-yu. They would disguise themselves as Muslims from the Middle East, use fake passports to fly to Saudi Arabia, and then on to Belarus, a country with no extradition treaty. After they'd had enough fun, they would assume new identities and return to Korea. Searching for clues, Young Woon consulted a psychological profiler. After observing Kai Young's home, the profiler deduced that Kai Young was a showman who considered himself a genius and believed he'd never be caught. Even if apprehended, he'd challenge anyone to understand his motives. Jin Sung then pointed out a photograph that seemed out of place. Young Woon explained it was taken when Kai Young beat him in a swimming competition. a moment Kai Young seemed to relish. The profiler suggested Kai Young was collecting trophies of his victories over Young Woon. This triggered a realization for Young Woon: Kai Young might be hiding in his own villa. Meanwhile, Kai Young took Young Ju to the villa's swimming pool, opened the drain, and told her it would fill with water within an hour. He wondered aloud if Young Woon would find her in time, then left her there. Finally, Young Woon and Jin Sung arrived at the villa. Jin Sung immediately spotted someone struggling in the pool and jumped in. With Young Woon's help, they rescued Young Ju. Young Woon told Jin Sung to go save Hee-ju while he handled things there. Jin Sung then led officers to the basement, where they found Min Jae-yu. It turned out Kai Young had locked him in a basement room. The lecherous Min Jae-yu had dutifully delivered dinner to Hee-ju, calling her his most prized possession. He planned to savor her after her last supper. However, as he prepared to leave, he discovered Kai Young had locked him inside. Min Jae-yu yelled frantically through the window while Kai Young, holding the keys, stood beside him, suggesting that at least one of them had to be arrested so Young Woon wouldn't lose face. Even after being arrested, Min Jae-yu continued to insist that his father was a congressman and demanded his immediate release. Fed up with his arrogance, Jin Sung kicked him and asked where Kai Young had gone. Min Jae-yu smirked and replied, "How can a betrayer tell the betrayed where they're going?" But from his words, Jin Sung realized Kai Young wasn't trying to cross the border, but was planning to escape by plane. Meanwhile, disguised as a Muslim and using a fake passport, Kai Young successfully obtained a boarding pass. Just as he was about to board, two men dressed in Muslim attire intercepted him. One of them stuck a label on Kai Young's neck, causing him to weaken instantly and collapse into a wheelchair. The man nodded at the airport's security camera. It turned out these men were sent by Captain Kim. He then spoke into his walkie-talkie, informing his team that Jin Sung had also arrived at the airport. Seeing Jin Sung approaching, Kai Young tried to use his remaining strength to attract his attention. But tragically, they passed each other by. As everyone left the airport, a mysterious woman emerged. She seemed to be acquainted with Jin Woo. She wrote the 3 words, "Oh Jin Woo," in a book. Earlier, Kai Young had visited this woman and shown her a video of Jin Woo being attacked. After watching the video, she was completely shocked. Now, looking at the Jinjin hospital before her, the woman decided to carry out her revenge plan. Elsewhere, everyone was celebrating the successful rescue of Young Ju and Hee-ju. But Young Woon received the news that Kai Young's body had been discovered in the suburbs. The investigation team immediately arrived at the scene and found the car burned beyond recognition. Investigators found a passport and a phone nearby, and the passport belonged to Kai Young. Forensic doctors proceeded to reconstruct the bone fragments found at the scene. Although the bones and fingerprints were destroyed by the high temperature, dental records confirmed the victim's identity as Kai Young. Jin Sung found this impossible to believe. Young Woon then opened Kai Young's phone. Inside was a video where Kai Young expressed his desire to die and bid a final farewell to Young Woon. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman invited Young Woon's mother to a restaurant. As soon as she sat down, the woman produced a letter. Inside was the hush money Young Woon's mother had given her years ago, which she hadn't used. She returned the money to Young Woon's mother, saying that upon her return, she would tell Young Woon's father that his son was alive and well. Young Woon's mother was suspicious about the woman's sudden reappearance. The mysterious woman explained that she was about to hold an exhibition in Korea and intended to invite Young Woon's mother and her son, Jin Woo, to attend. She felt it was time for Jin Woo to meet his real family. Young Woon's mother was apprehensive about the mysterious woman's sudden appearance. Fortunately, she was still unaware of her son's death. At the prosecutor's office, Young Ju wanted to personally interrogate Min Jae-yu. She asked him when he and Kai Young had started plotting the serial murders. Min Jae-yu arrogantly claimed to be the victim. A year before the incidents, Kai Young had suddenly visited his clinic. While they were drinking, Min Jae-yu confided about his troubled marriage. He claimed their relationship was like fire and water, and someone had to die. He'd casually asked Kai Young if he knew any hitmen. Initially, Kai Young genuinely started planning everything for him. Min Jae-yu felt trapped by Kai Young. Kai Young then suggested he use the serial murders to divert suspicion. If he simply killed his wife, Min Jae-yu, as the husband, would be the prime suspect. However, making his wife a victim of a serial killer could create the perfect crime. At this point, Min Jae-yu found a scapegoat, Lee Jung. Kai Young helped Lee Jung get a job at Min Jae-yu's clinic. Min Jae-yu was still trying to shift all the blame onto Kai Young and Lee Jung, claiming Kai Young orchestrated everything and Lee Jung carried it out. Young Ju showed him the video she found at Kai Young's house, depicting Min Jae-yu murdering his wife. Min Jae-yu flew into a rage after watching it, cursing Kai Young as a bastard. After speaking with his lawyer, Min Jae-yu confessed to killing his wife. That day, Min Jae-yu had taken Lion Run to a nightclub, deliberately flirting with someone in front of the cameras to establish an alibi. Meanwhile, Kai Young had already planted the murder weapon at the exhibition hall. Min Jae-yu then slipped out through the nightclub's back exit, an area without cameras and close to the exhibition hall. He retrieved the weapon and entered the hall. There, while his wife was distracted, he forcibly injected her with an anesthetic and killed her. Unbeknownst to him, Kai Young had filmed the entire scene from behind a revolving door. Min Jae-yu insisted this was the truth of the case. He claimed Lee Jung committed the previous 2 murders. Young Ju pointed out that Kai Young had confessed to the prosecution that Min Jae-yu did everything, while now Min Jae-yu was blaming Lee Jung. She suspected Min Jae-yu was trying to minimize his sentence by shifting the blame. However, Min Jae-yu insisted he was innocent, arguing that if he had committed the other murders, that bastard Kai Young would have filmed them too. Ultimately, the serial murder case was closed. Min Jae-yu was prosecuted for murdering his wife and as an accomplice in the serial murders. Kai Young, being deceased, couldn't be prosecuted. Young Woon was suspicious of Kai Young's suicide. The minister believed the dental records and the photograph confirmed it as a suicide. Furthermore, the news about the case involving Kai Young had been released, and the public had finally stopped criticizing the authorities. Du also suspected that Kai Young, having witnessed Jin Woo's murder, might have been killed or his death staged as a suicide. The chief prosecutor finally agreed to let Young Woon investigate, on the condition that he take a few days off first. One day, Jin Sung's mother dreamt of Jin Woo the night before, and remembered it was his birthday. Young Ju's mother saw her making seaweed soup and asked whose birthday it was. Jin Sung's mother explained she dreamt of Jin Woo, which reminded her of his birthday. Go's mother pointed out that Jin Woo's birthday had already passed, since he and Jin Sung shared the same birthday. Jin Sung's mother then revealed the truth. Jin Woo's birthday was actually that day. She had previously claimed they shared a birthday for convenience. She swore Young Ju's mother to secrecy, fearing for her life if Jin Sung found out. Young Ju's mother promised to keep the secret. In the blink of an eye, she had told Dr. Chu everything. Dr. Chu said he would prepare a birthday party for Jin Woo that evening. Jin Woo loved cake, so he would take care of it. That evening, Jin Sung's mother also asked him to prepare a table of food. Dr. Chu brought the cake that Jin Woo loved. Just as the 3 of them were about to start the birthday party, Jin Sung and Young Ju returned home. Jin Sung, seeing a table laden with food, curiously asked whose birthday it was. Both Jin Sung's mother and Young Ju's mother simultaneously claimed it was Dr. Chu's birthday. Under Jin Sung's persistent questioning, Young Ju's mother finally admitted it was Jin Woo's birthday. Jin Sung's mother hastily explained that Young Ju's mother was getting old and senile, often mistaking dates. Jin Sung looked at the food on the table. It was all Jin Woo's favorite dishes. Even the birthday cake was the mint chocolate cake Jin Woo loved. Seeing all this, Young Ju's mother hurriedly ushered everyone away. Only then did Jin Sung's mother reveal the truth. Jin Woo wasn't Jin Sung's biological brother. Years ago, when she was pregnant with Jin Sung and living in Xi'an, a very quiet girl lived next door. Her parents owed a lot of money, and then, due to unforeseen circumstances, both of them passed away. The girl worked part-time while attending university. Taking pity on her, Jin Sung's mother often invited her over for meals. Later, when they moved to Eugene, Jin Sung's mother gave the girl a pair of leather shoes and their home address. She told her that if she couldn't make ends meet, she could come to Eugene and find them. One afternoon, years later, the girl appeared before her with a baby. She hadn't escaped her tragic fate. Jin Sung's mother then gave her a job at her restaurant. One day, when they were walking by the seashore, Jin Sung's mother noticed the girl staring blankly at the ocean. She knew the girl must be suffering deeply. But unexpectedly, a few days later, the girl jumped into the sea and committed suicide. Because they couldn't find the body, the police treated it as a suicide. At the time, she couldn't bear to send Jin Woo to an orphanage. When she registered Jin Woo's birth date, not knowing his real one, she used Jin Sung's. Later, while sorting through Jin Woo's mother's belongings, she discovered his actual birth date. Years later, when Jin Woo was in high school, his biological mother suddenly reappeared. It turned out she had been rescued by a poor man after jumping into the sea. They then married. Jin Sung found it strange that Jin Woo didn't leave with his biological mother. Jin Woo said he wanted to stay with them. Jin Sung's mother said that if Jin Woo had left then, perhaps he wouldn't have died. Jin Sung recounted this story to Young Ju. He felt immense guilt for not taking better care of Jin Woo. Instead, it was Jin Woo, his younger brother, who always looked after him. As the older brother, he didn't even know how his brother died. He didn't deserve to be called a brother. Young Ju comforted Jin Sung, telling him not to blame himself. If Jin Woo saw him like this, he would be heartbroken. Jin Sung declared that he would definitely investigate how Jin Woo died. Meanwhile, Young Woon told his parents that he wanted to marry Young Ju. His parents were taken aback by this news, as their ideal daughter-in-law was Hee Ju, the daughter of the chief prosecutor. Young Woon hoped his parents would respect his decision. Later, Young Woon went to Eugene to see Young Ju. After finishing a beer, Young Woon promptly proposed. Young Ju was surprised. She asked why he proposed right away instead of confessing his feelings first. Young Ju admitted that she liked Young Woon, but she thought it was too early to get married. At least, they should wait until after Jin Woo's case was solved. Young Woon was about to agree to marry him when she stopped him. There was something she had to know first. He confessed to having had congenital heart disease, but assured her he was now fully recovered. The previous year, before his additional training, he'd undergone a heart transplant. He told her that if she loved him, she would love his imperfections and scars as well. Meanwhile, Jin Sung found a photo that Jin Woo had kept and asked his mother, "Have you ever heard Jin Woo mention this?" Seeing the photo, Jin Sung's mother recalled Jin Woo telling her that his birth mother had said his biological father's house contained an identical statue. Jin Woo had visited his father's house, but hadn't been able to see him. Jin Sung's mother only knew that Jin Woo's mother's name was Jin Mary, and that she had studied fine arts at Korea University. She knew nothing else. They then discussed Dr. Chu's affection for Jin Woo. Jin Sung's mother gave Jin Sung the diary that Dr. Chu had kept about Jin Woo. After reading it, Jin Sung immediately sensed something was amiss. It wasn't a typical diary, but more like an observation report. He went to the clinic and confronted Dr. Chu, asking why he was monitoring Jin Woo. Dr. Chu stammered, claiming that Director Kim from Jinjin Hospital had requested it. He then showed Jin Sung a picture of Director Kim. Jin Sung recognized him as the person who always handled tasks for the Yo family. Jin Sung arranged a meeting with Director Kim. He questioned him about the surveillance of Jin Woo. After reading the observation log, Director Kim claimed it was part of a research project at Jinjin Hospital. When Jin Sung requested to see the research materials, Director Kim refused, citing trade secrets. Jin Sung then asked him where he was on the day Jin Woo was harmed. After checking his schedule, Director Kim told Jin Sung that he hadn't been in Yuan that day. He gave Jin Sung his business card, offering his cooperation in the investigation if needed. Back at the police station, Jin Sung analyzed the situation with his colleague. Director Kim's answers had been too smooth, everything seemingly prepared in advance, which deepened Jin Sung's suspicions. His colleague revealed that Director Kim had been a member of a special forces unit, and he was contacting former comrades to obtain his records. The next day, Yong Tae from the Ministry of Transportation joined the Major Crimes Unit. Through his confidential channels, he discovered that Dr. Chu had been prosecuted for a medical incident, and that Jinjin Hospital had helped him cover it up. Suddenly, a lawyer arrived at the Major Crimes Unit. He was Kang's legal counsel and also his designated heir. Despite the inheritance agreement, everyone was skeptical. Normally, family or relatives would inherit. Why would Ka Young leave his assets to his lawyer? Lawyer Hong explained that his mother and Kai Young's mother had been close friends and that Kai Young had no other relatives. He hadn't mentioned anyone else besides him. He recalled Kai Young summoning him to a bar and naming him as his heir. At the time, Lawyer Hong had thought he was joking, but Kai Young had explained that he feared suddenly disappearing one day and wanted to designate an heir beforehand. While his assets weren't substantial, he didn't want them confiscated. He had one condition. He wanted Lawyer Hong to visit his mother's grave on the anniversary of her death. Lawyer Hong told Jin Sung that both his and Kai Young's mothers had been models. That evening, Jin Sung recounted the day's investigative findings to Young Ju. He felt that Director Kim's mention of the Jinjin Hospital research project was definitely a lie. He planned to share this information with Young Woon the following day. Young Ju worried about how Young Woon would handle this news, given her previous heart transplant. Young Ju revealed Young Woon's congenital heart condition and the transplant she had undergone the previous year to Jin Sung. Jin Sung felt a pang of guilt, remembering his past conflict with Young Woon. Young Ju told him not to blame himself and to keep him updated on any new developments. The next day, with the help of a colleague, Jin Sung found a former member of Chief Kim's Special Forces unit. The man told everyone that Chief Kim was the best in the Special Forces, consistently achieving perfect scores on all his tests. Eventually, he was injured during an overseas operation. He was near death, but Young Woon's mother, who worked at Jinjin Hospital, saved his life. Afterward, he left the Special Forces and disappeared without a trace. The former team member had wanted to invite Chief Kim onto his live stream. He even had the title ready, Brave Andrew. At that moment, Jin Sung suddenly remembered seeing the name Andrew on a purchase list when he was investigating the limited edition button. He immediately left everyone and rushed to the clothing store. Jin Sung reviewed the customer information for the button purchase and discovered that there was indeed someone named Andrew. However, the phone number on the record was different from Chief Kim's. Prompted by the store clerk, Jin Sung used the store's phone to call the number on the record. It turned out that Chief Kim was the one who had harmed Jin Woo. Jin Sung returned to the police station and told everyone the results of his investigation. The person who attacked Jin Woo was Chief Kim. His motive was undoubtedly following orders from Young Woon's mother. He had previously overheard Go-Do mentioning Jin Woo's organ donation and the fact that Prosecutor Tra was undergoing a heart transplant. He suspected that Chief Kim, in order to facilitate Young Woon's heart transplant, had attacked Jin Woo, causing him to become brain dead. The police felt that, as the largest hospital in the country, Jinjin Hospital shouldn't have difficulty finding a compatible heart for Prosecutor Tra. If Jin Woo was connected to Prosecutor Tra's heart transplant, then why? Why did it have to be Jin Woo's heart? Moreover, how could they be certain of a successful match with Jin Woo? Jin Sung told them to investigate the recipient of Jin Woo's donated heart first. At this time, Jin Sung received a call from his mother. Someone had sent Jin Woo an exhibition invitation. The invitation was identical to the picture Jin Woo had left behind. Jin Sung decided to go and meet this artist, Mary. Jin Sung went to the exhibition hall and asked the person in charge for Mary's contact information, but he was refused due to privacy concerns. Jin Sung overheard that Mary had an exclusive interview on Wednesday. Therefore, he made an appointment with HCU to investigate Mary's phone number through her reporter friends. While talking, Jin Sung learned an important clue from HCU. The sculpture in the picture was identical to a sculpture at Young Woon's house. Jin Sung went to the design company with Hee Ju's help. After seeing the picture, the person in charge said it was Chairman Cha's sculpture. That year, they had submitted many designs, but Chairman Cha chose a piece by an intern. At the time, there were rumors about Chairman Cha and this intern. Jin Sung asked if the intern's name was Jin Mary. The person in charge confirmed that it was. As Jin Sung was preparing to leave, he received a message from Hee Ju. He immediately sent a message to Mary, telling her that he was Jin Woo's brother and hoped to meet her. Mary checked her schedule and replied to Jin Sung, agreeing to meet at 7:30 that evening. That evening, Jin Sung went to the hotel as scheduled. He happened to run into Chief Kim, who was preparing to leave. After the two sized each other up, Chief Kim left the hotel. His purpose was to sign a confidentiality agreement with Mary. Mary was not to reveal her relationship with Jinwoo. In exchange, the Jinjin Corporation would sponsor her with $2 million. Faced with Jin Sung's insinuations, Mary didn't answer his question. Jin Sung still met with Young Woon and updated him on the latest developments in Jin Woo's murder case. Young Woon couldn't believe that Chief Kim was the culprit. He then reviewed Dr. Chu's surveillance report, including the photos Jin Woo had saved. Young Woon began to struggle internally. He didn't want to accept these things as truth, but the evidence in front of him made it impossible not to believe. Young Woon returned home, lost in thought. Seeing his son staring blankly at the sculpture in Jin Woo's photo, Chairman Father asked him why he wasn't coming inside. Young Woon asked his father if he knew Jin Mary. Chairman Father was stunned for a moment, then told him the truth. He had an affair with Jin Mary years ago. They even had a child together. Not long after, Young Woon's mother found out. Ultimately, due to family pressure, he broke up with Jin Mary. Chairman Father asked Young Woon if he had met that child. Young Woon told his father that the child was dead. Back in his room, Young Woon couldn't believe that all of this was true. Jin Woo was his half-brother. He understood that Jin Sung's deduction was correct. He then messaged Jin Sung, confirming his suspicions. Jin Sung told Young Ju everything and said that everything was corroborated by Young Woon's evidence. The surveillance on Jin Woo wasn't for a scientific research project at all, but for Young Woon to receive Jin Woo's heart. That's why Chief Kim was ordered to kill Jin Woo. Now, if they could just find out who ultimately stole Jin Woo's heart, all their deductions would be proven. The next day, Jin Sung received the organ donation records and was disheartened. There was no record of Young Woon receiving a heart transplant between the time of Jin Woo's death and Young Woon's departure from the country. A total of 8 heart transplants were performed, but none of them documented Young Woon's procedure. He felt certain these were falsified records from Jinjin Hospital. Young Woon also received the transplant records and asked his surgeon why his surgery wasn't documented. The doctor said that he was only responsible for the surgery itself, not the transplant process. Young Woon pressed the doctor, saying he had just contacted the recipient of Jin Woo's heart, who claimed he never received a transplant. The doctor didn't say anything but left in a panic. Meanwhile, Jin Sung, working on the case, was preparing to arrest Chief Kim. He told Young Ju to get an arrest warrant, but Young Ju told him not to be impulsive. So, Jin Sung went to see Chief Kim. He said he needed to confirm a few things about Jin Woo's case. Chief Kim felt that he had already said everything last time. If Jin Sung wanted to know more, he should follow procedure. If Jin Sung continued to cause trouble, he would be dealt with according to hospital regulations. At that moment, Jin Sung remembered Young Ju's advice and said he would follow procedure. Elsewhere, Young Woon went to Chief Kim's house. He told Chief Kim that he knew about his mother saving him in a moment of crisis. He understood that Chief Kim would protect his mother for the rest of his life. Young Woon held up the button and told him that Jin Sung found this pin at Jin Woo's murder scene. He didn't understand why Chief Kim hadn't replaced it or thrown it away. Chief Kim said that the button was a gift from the director to commemorate his 25th anniversary with Young Woon's mother, so he couldn't bear to throw it away. Chief Kim felt that Young Woon's mother had sacrificed her entire life to save him. It was the most noble thing a mother could do. He hoped Young Woon could understand a mother's heart. Young Woon told him that the investigation team had evidence and a lot of intel. This time, escaping the law would be very difficult. As Young Woon was about to return to his car, his watch alarm went off, and his heart began to ache. After returning home, he confronted his mother, asking if she knew that the heart Jin Woo had donated to him belonged to his own brother. Young Woon's mother said that Jin Woo was brain dead when he was brought to the hospital, and his organs were simply a match, which is why they were transplanted. It was standard procedure, and therefore, it had nothing to do with Young Woon. Young Woon couldn't believe his mother's coldness and indifference. He showed her the heart transplant surgery records, asking why they were falsified if everything was as she claimed. He'd been unlucky to be born with a heart condition, but he couldn't accept that his mother had resorted to such a terrifying method to save him. No mother in the world would choose to commit a crime to save her son. His mother countered that other mothers might not, but she would sacrifice everything to do so. She couldn't bear to see her son disappear from this world. Was she supposed to just watch Young Woon die? Young Woon felt that it would have been better to die. Now, he was a shameless older brother who had stolen his younger brother's life. After Young Woon left, the chairman, his father, asked his wife if she'd planned to transplant Jin Woo's heart from the beginning. Young Woon's mother replied that finding the best match for Young Woon was her responsibility. Even if the best match had been the chairman himself, the outcome wouldn't have changed. Later, the chairman sought out Young Woon to talk. He told him that his mother hadn't slept more than 2 hours a night for the past 20 years, checking on Young Woon every 2 hours. Before she was a doctor, she was a mother. She couldn't allow any uncertainty regarding Young Woon's well-being. After his father left, Young Ju called. She knew Young Woon was in a difficult position, but she still told him she believed his mother had orchestrated everything. Young Ju recounted the entire case to Young Woon, but he argued that even the button found at the crime scene couldn't definitively prove who the murderer was. Even if he had gone to Yujin, it didn't prove he'd killed Jin Woo. He had to consider all possibilities. Young Ju asked how he explained the missing transplant records, especially when the patient records indicated Jin Woo's heart had been transplanted, but no such surgery had taken place. Young Woon pleaded with Young Ju not to get involved in the case. She'd worked so hard to become a prosecutor and risked losing everything, even her position. He was trying to persuade her to drop it. Young Ju said her mind was made up. Young Woon told her to choose between him and Jin Woo. But no matter who she chose, they could never go back to their carefree, innocent past. Meanwhile, Jin Sung knocked on team leader Kim's door and placed him under emergency arrest on suspicion of the crime. Jin Woo returned to the police station. Team leader Kim's lawyer was furious. If they had an arrest warrant, why the emergency arrest? Jin Sung stated that the suspect was special forces and a flight risk. Jin Sung then began to interrogate Chief Kim, but he feigned ignorance, refusing to answer any questions. The lawyer felt Jin Sung's accusations were based purely on speculation without any concrete evidence. Jin Sung then produced a USB drive, claiming it contained a video of Chief Kim assaulting Jin Woo. Chief Kim hadn't anticipated a witness recording the incident. Upon hearing this, his eyebrows shot up involuntarily. He began to feel uneasy. Jin Sung prepared to charge him with suspicion of Jin Woo's murder and take him to the police station, adding that he had an accomplice named Yu. As soon as he heard the director's name, Chief Kim warned Jin Sung to be careful about making false accusations, regardless of how he constructed his narrative. As Jin Sung was about to escort Chief Kim, who had just returned from the restroom, back to the interrogation room, a colleague rushed in and informed him that the arrest warrant would be rejected. They were now forced to release Chief Kim immediately. Meanwhile, the chief prosecutor suddenly approached Young Ju and asked about Hee-ju's daughter. It turned out that Hee-ju's daughter had unexpectedly visited him the day before, expressing her desire to work and specifically join Young Ju's investigative team. From now on, she was determined to be an upright prosecutor. Young Ju admitted she didn't know the reason, having only explained the details of the case to Hee-ju. The chief prosecutor encouraged Young Ju, saying, "Do your best. After all, this is the effort you're making in exchange for giving up your career as a prosecutor and your whole life." Hee-ju's daughter, on her first day, bought everyone coffee. She then shared a secret. She had met Min Jae-yu's lawyer in the neurology department of the hospital. She planned to use the pretense of depression to request a neurological evaluation for Min Jae-yu, with the evaluation being conducted by Zinin Hospital. Hee-ju's daughter was shocked that Young Woon's mother would do something so appalling. Elsewhere, Jin Sung's mother noticed his former colleagues frequenting her restaurant. Jin Sung had actually asked them to protect and monitor Dr. Chu before they left. Jin Sung's mother pulled one of them aside. Under her insistent questioning, Jin Sung's former colleague revealed the truth. Soon after, Jin Sung's mother arrived in Seoul. She demanded to know from Jin Sung who killed Jin Woo and to whom Dr. Chu's diary was given at Zinin Hospital. She vowed to kill that person. Jin Sung's mother was furious. She felt she needed to know everything, especially since she was singing while her son was dying. She declared she wouldn't leave Seoul until she had the answers. Meanwhile, at Chairman Cha's house, several people were discussing Chief Kim's case. The lawyer stated that while the police would request his presence for questioning, there was currently no concrete evidence, so whether or not Chief Kim complied was his prerogative. As the lawyer was about to open a bottle of champagne in celebration, Young Woon entered the room. He snatched the champagne and poured it into an ice bucket. He informed everyone that Chief Kim and his mother would be indicted for premeditated murder. While there was no direct evidence, there was a substantial amount of circumstantial evidence. The lawyer expressed concern about the witness the police had mentioned earlier. After the lawyer left, Young Woon revealed that the witness was Kai Young. He then asked his father and stepmother if they had interfered with Kai Young's questioning. He framed the question as seeking legal advice for his mother, hoping for an honest answer. Young Woon's mother flatly denied any involvement. Young Woon then stated he was offering advice as a prosecutor to protect his family. The only truth that mattered now was that Jin Woo was his father's illegitimate son, and it was imperative to silence his birth mother. Young Woon's mother retorted that a lowlife would sell her child for money. She had already paid enough to keep her quiet. At this point, Young Ju also thought of finding Mary as a witness to prove that Chief Kim knew Jin Woo was the chairman's illegitimate son. Then, she would file for an arrest warrant for conspiracy to commit a crime. The next day, Young Woon's mother, feeling uneasy, went to the hotel to find Mary. She wanted to talk to Mary, but Mary asked her to wait because she had an appointment with someone else. That someone turned out to be Jin Sung. As soon as Mary arrived, she stated that Jin Woo was killed by Jinjin Hospital and asked why Kai Young died. This startled Jin Sung, as Mary seemed to know Kai Young. Mary told Jin Sung that she had actually known the truth about Jin Woo's death before returning to Korea. Prior to that, Kai Young, posing as a reporter, had approached her and shown her a video of Jin Woo's murder. Mary was shocked to learn of Jin Woo's death. Kai Young then showed her another video, revealing Young Woon's organ transplant. He told Mary that he, too, was once chosen as an organ donor, but was passed over due to having hepatitis B. Otherwise, he would have disappeared even sooner than Jin Woo. Although Detective Jin Sung couldn't save Jin Woo, he was determined to investigate his death. He felt that Mary, as a mother, would surely find ways to seek justice for Jin Woo, perhaps even revenge. Mary admitted that although she had never cooked a meal for Jin Woo or praised him, she had never forgotten him. She had been waiting for Jin Woo to forgive and accept her. But now, Jin Woo was gone. The only thing she could do for him now was one thing. Then, she handed Jin Sung a file containing the confidentiality agreement she had signed with Jinjin Hospital. Young Woon's mother, standing outside, saw Mary meeting with Jin Sung. This was intentional on Mary's part. Young Woon's mother criticized Mary for never keeping her promises. Mary retorted that the agreement contained nothing about Jin Woo's death, nor did it restrict her from cooperating with a police investigation. She then reiterated the content of the secretly recorded conversation right in front of Young Woon's mother, who realized that her conversation with Chief Kim had been recorded. Young Woon's mother returned to her car and told Chief Kim that Mary had sided with the opposition and that she now knew who the rat in their house was. Upon returning home, she immediately interrogated the maid, asking if she had been threatened by Kai Young. Upon hearing this, the maid immediately knelt down, begging Director Yu for forgiveness. When she first started working, she was often scolded for making mistakes. Kai Young would often comfort her. Later, when her mother was hospitalized, he gave her a large sum of money for medical expenses. In return, Kai Young had asked her to be his informant. Since then, while cleaning, she secretly installed cameras in the study. She even overheard Chief Kim's plans to go to Eugene at 2 o'clock and secretly messaged Kai Young. Jin Sung told Young Ju about Mary's plan for revenge. Everyone then realized that to conceal Jin Woo's identity, Jinjin Hospital had paid Mary for her silence. With the current evidence, there was enough to arrest Chief Kim and Young Woon's mother. However, it was essential to let the prosecution handle the case from this point forward. At this point, Jin Sung received a call from lawyer Hong's mother, who was also a friend of Kai Young's mother. She had just returned from a trip and told Jin Sung that she and Kai Young's mother were both models for the Jinjin Corporation years ago. The chairman at the time was very fond of Kai Young's mother, but not long after, she gave birth to Kai Young. There were rumors that the chairman was Kai Young's biological father, which Kai Young's mother never denied. Shortly after Kai Young's birth, his mother lost her job. The two lived in a basement apartment. Lawyer Hong's mother often went to help them. Later, she discovered that Kai Young's mother was frequently taking medication. Kai Young's mother said it was a health supplement sent by Jinjin Hospital, but lawyer Hong's mother felt that the medication wasn't good for her health. Not long afterward, Kai Young's mother was hospitalized for drug poisoning. The doctor said it was poison. She felt certain that Jinjin had intentionally poisoned Kai Young's mother. Otherwise, why would she have been poisoned? After arranging Kai Young's mother's funeral, she told Kai Young everything. She thought Kai Young should know how his mother died. But now she regretted telling him. If he hadn't known, he wouldn't have done such terrible things, and he might not have even lost his life. Jin Sung brought the details of their conversation back to the investigation team. Young Ju immediately identified a critical issue. If Kai Young wanted revenge on Young Woon's mother, why would he commit suicide? Jin Sung also felt that Kai Young wouldn't kill himself. The person who wanted him gone was Young Woon's mother. But if Kai Young was murdered, the prime suspect would be Director Yu. However, if it were suicide, no one would suspect her. Later, Jin Sung invited Young Woon to Kai Young's house. He told Young Woon that the reason Kai Young was so fixated on him was because they were brothers. He was there to collect Kai Young's DNA. He hoped Young Woon would take a DNA test. After seeing the DNA results, Young Woon was distraught. He took the DNA report to his mother. He couldn't understand why she hadn't told him that Kai Young was his brother. Was she still concerned about her half-brother's feelings, which was why she had arranged for Kai Young to receive special care at the Jinjin Treatment Center. But when Kai Young learned of her plan, he hid from them. He spent years preparing an elaborate revenge plot. Young Woon's mother said that because Kai Young's mother was a model for Jinjin, she kindly offered financial support. She claimed Kai Young had been malnourished as a child due to neglect, and she had cared for him like her own son. Young Woon then asked his mother, "Did you have anything to do with Kai Young's suicide?" He insisted he needed to know the whole truth as her legal counsel. Young Woon's mother insisted that whether Kai Young committed suicide or was murdered, it was a matter for the investigation team and had nothing to do with her. Back at the police station, the investigation team reviewed the DNA report and analyzed the case details. If Kai Young were alive and arrested, it would be troublesome for Young Woon's mother. Both her relationship with the prosecutor father and the fact that she wanted to merge Jin Woo's team could be exposed. The police began to question whether Kai Young was truly dead. Could they conclude that it was Kai Young based solely on a passport and a phone? Another officer explained that the National Forensic Service had conducted an identification, and the evidence pointed to Park Kai Young. The first officer then asked what the National Forensic Service based their identification on, given the burned state of the body. The other officer replied, "Dental records." The first officer immediately grasped the key issue. Was the hospital that provided the dental information Jinjin Hospital? So, they had to start the investigation all over again. Jin Sung then learned from the forensics team that teeth could be artificially reproduced. With a patient's dental X-rays, an identical tooth could be created. It would be easy for Jinjin Hospital to create a genetically identical tooth. Jin Sung discovered that Kang's dental X-rays were 4 years old. He likely had dental work done elsewhere. Everyone immediately recalled Kai Young's associate, the perverted dentist Min Juyu. Jin Sung visited Min Jayu in prison and learned that he had been Kai Young's dentist for years. He obtained 2 sets of X-rays, one from Min Jayu's clinic and one provided by Jinjin Hospital, which showed clear differences. Min Jayu told Jin Sung that he treated a cavity for Kai Young 2 years prior. It became clear that Jinjin Hospital was using old data to recreate Kai Young's teeth, leading them to believe the deceased in the fire was Kai Young. Jin Sung felt that Kai Young might still be alive. During lunch, the police officer mentioned checking security footage and sub-Makam Korean shaved ice dessert. This reminded Jin Sung of the day they arrested Chief Kim. There was a breakfast of milk and strawberries on his table. However, as they were leaving, the building manager brought sub-Makam, claiming it was Chief Kim's breakfast. Coincidentally, Lawyer Hong's mother had mentioned that Kai Young loved her sub-Makam. Jin Sung realized Kai Young must be hiding in Chief Kim's apartment. They went to the adjacent apartment, Jin Sung having obtained the access code from the manager's office. Upon entering, Jin Sung quickly spotted a man standing on the balcony. Kai Young, the man they presumed dead. The police then summoned Chief Kim for questioning. A warrant for his arrest was approved, but the warrant for Young Woon's mother was denied. Initially, Chief Kim refused to answer Young Ju's questions. Only when she presented a button did he admit it was his. He confessed to killing Jin Woo. claiming it was an accidental push. It turned out Jinjin Hospital knew about the impending arrest warrant. With Mary's betrayal, his bribery was undeniable. Therefore, Young Woon proposed that Chief Kim take sole responsibility, claiming manslaughter. The maximum sentence would be 5 years. The second appeal hearing reiterated that he lied to minimize the impact on Jinjin Hospital. This could overturn the previous testimony, arguing there was no direct evidence linking him to Jin Woo's death. The initial appeal verdict was overturned, and he was acquitted. The lawyer agreed this was the best course of action. Chief Kim, hearing this, prepared to take the fall. Young Ju seemed to have anticipated Chief Kim's confession. She showed him a video secretly recorded by Kai Young. Both Chief Kim and his lawyer were stunned. Jin Sung had finally located Kai Young and accessed his iCloud account, which contained numerous videos implicating Director Yu and Chief Kim in their crimes. Chief Kim's lawyer argued that the video was obtained illegally and couldn't be used as admissible evidence against his client. Young Ju countered that while it might not be legally admissible, the video was enough to prove that Director Yu and Chief Kim had been plotting Jin Woo's murder for a long time. She asserted their complicity was clear, but the lawyer disagreed, dismissing any evidence obtained through unlawful investigation. Ignoring him, Young Ju pressed Chief Kim, "Did Director Yu order you to kidnap Kai Young?" Chief Kim denied receiving such an order, claiming, as far as he knew, Kai Young had turned himself in. Meanwhile, Young Woon received the secretly recorded video of his mother. He stated the investigative team would consider it crucial evidence in the attempted murder case. While the video, obtained through an unauthorized third party, might not be admissible, he suspected the prosecution had other substantial leads. Even if his mother's arrest warrant was dismissed, she could still be subject to emergency arrest. Just as he finished speaking, Jin Sung burst in. The police were placing his mother under emergency arrest for conspiring to murder Jin Woo. Jin Sung had intended to handcuff Director Yu, but considering Young Woon's feelings, he ultimately refrained. In the interrogation room, Young Ju asked Director Yu if she had ordered anyone to kidnap Kai Young. Director Yu simply denied it. Young Ju pressed further, "Were you aware of the relationship between Jin Woo, Kai Young, and Young Woon?" Director Yu maintained her ignorance, refusing to acknowledge any plan to use Kai Young as an organ donor for Young Woon. Following Director Yu's denial, Young Ju brought Chief Kim into the interrogation room. After confirming their conflicting statements, she called in a witness, Kai Young. Everyone was stunned by his unexpected appearance. Shame washed over Chief Kim as Director Yu stared at him. It turned out Director Yu had indeed instructed Chief Kim to kill Kai Young, but Chief Kim had other plans. He confined Kai Young and forced him to record a video disguised as a suicide note. Cornered, Chief Kim admitted to kidnapping Kai Young, but insisted he hadn't acted on Director Yu's orders, attempting to take the blame entirely upon himself. However, Kai Young revealed that during his confinement, Chief Kim had explicitly stated he was acting on Director Yu's instructions to kill him. The lawyer immediately objected, arguing a criminal's testimony was unreliable. Young Ju calmly stated she would make her own determination. Chief Kim then claimed Director Yu had only intended for Kai Young to confess, and he had misinterpreted her instructions, taking it upon himself to kidnap Kai Young and stage a disappearance. He confessed, taking full responsibility. Young Ju ordered her subordinates to take him away. She then produced a DNA test report, explaining it was found on Director Yu's laptop. It clearly documented that Kai Young and Young Woon were half-brothers. Furthermore, there was a copy of the agreement for Kai Young to become Young Woon's organ donor. "You said you didn't know anything. Then why are these documents on your computer?" Kai Young angrily criticized Director Yu for how she treated his mother. Afterward, Young Ju called in Team Leader Kim. Young Ju asked Team Leader Kim to confirm whether he had truly killed Jin Woo by accident. Unexpectedly, Team Leader Kim remained firm in his initial statement. Young Ju didn't waste any more words. She presented evidence. It turned out Kai Young had been at the scene the entire time. He had filmed Team Leader Kim following Jin Woo, the assault, and finally, the killing itself. Young Ju questioned Team Leader Kim, asking if all those actions were merely an accident. It was clearly premeditated murder. Young Ju then asked Team Leader Kim if Director Yu was involved in Jin Woo's death. Loyal as ever, Team Leader Kim denied any connection. Young Ju presented another piece of evidence, this time a copy of a document showing that Jin Woo's heart had been transplanted into Young Woon. Director Yu had known for a long time that Jin Woo and Young Woon were half-brothers, which was why she had Dr. Chu monitor Jin Woo. But despite having so much evidence, the chief prosecutor ordered Young Ju to release team leader Kim, and the investigation team decided on a new plan. They had to find evidence of Director Yu's guilt. Their target for a breakthrough was Mr. B. After listening to Young Ju's interrogation, Young Woon couldn't take it anymore. Ashamed, he left the observation room and immediately informed the minister that Kai Young was still alive. Young Woon felt he needed to reinvestigate the serial killings with Kai Young. During the interrogation, Young Woon told Kai Young that Min Jae-yu had only confessed to killing his wife. The other victims were murdered by Lee Sung-young, while he only provided the funds. Young Woon asked Kai Young if he agreed with this statement. Kai Young confirmed that it was the truth. He was also the one who reported Lee Jung at the hotel. Before that, he had seen Jin Woo sharpening a knife at the restaurant. This gave him the idea to use an advanced knife for the crimes and frame Jin Woo. He exploited Jin Woo's psychological trauma, turning him into a fixated killer. Thus, a serial killer obsessed with ankles was born. The interrogation ended, and Young Woon turned off the surveillance equipment. Privately, Young Woon asked Kai Young why he hadn't told him about his mother's plan beforehand. Kai Young felt he was just a tool Young Woon needed. He had never lived his own life. What could he have changed even if he had told Young Woon? Young Woon recalled a childhood incident when he had collapsed from a heart attack while playing volleyball. It was Kai Young who had carried him to the infirmary. Since then, he had always considered Kai Young a brother. Kai Young said he had always seen Young Woon as a brother and had worked diligently to reach Young Woon's level. He had also longed for his stepmother's love until he learned her true intentions. At that moment, everything became meaningless. But Young Woon felt that if Kai Young had told him, there would have been another way. He didn't have to go down this path. Kai Young shouted angrily. There was no other way. Young Woon had no idea how powerful his mother and Jinjin Hospital were. After Young Woon left, Jin Sung entered the interrogation room. Jin Sung asked him, "When did you decide to take revenge?" After his mother's funeral, Kai Young's mother's close friend told him about his parentage and how Jinjin Hospital had poisoned his mother. Later, Kai Young learned from a doctor that his mother had been taking painkillers laced with an anesthetic, but the hospital hadn't prescribed her any such medication. His mother must have received the medication from someone else after he obtained the DNA test results. He initially believed it was Director Yu's revenge for her husband's infidelity. On the day he passed the bar exam, the alarm for Young Woon's heart condition went off in the hospital. Kai Young, intending to tell his stepmother about passing the exam, unexpectedly discovered on her computer that he was part of an organ donation plan for Young Woon. He secretly downloaded the plan, but later, upon discovering it, he realized there was another donor for Young Woon besides himself, Jin Woo. Furthermore, Dr. Chu's report was also included. He deliberately went to Yuan to meet Jin Woo and took a strand of his hair. He then conducted a DNA test, confirming his suspicion that the three of them were brothers. At that point, he planned the serial murders, solely to prevent Young Woon's heart transplant surgery. As long as Jin Woo was in prison, the transplant would be delayed. He intended to wait until Jin Woo was incarcerated, then flee the country, thwarting Director Yu's long-held plan. Meanwhile, Young Ju continued her interrogation of Director Yu. This time, she located a witness named Mary. When Mary saw the contract Young Ju produced, she claimed that team leader Kim brought it to her hotel for her signature. A few days after her meeting with Director Yu, the lawyer insisted his client wasn't drunk, prompting team leader Kim to negotiate the contract. Young Ju played a recording. It turned out that while signing the contract, Mary deliberately mentioned Director Yu to team leader Kim, and their conversation was recorded. Director Yu couldn't deny the recording. Afterward, Young Ju received a summons from the chief prosecutor. It turned out he wanted her to release Director Yu. If further investigation was necessary, it could be conducted without detaining her. Although reluctant, Young Ju agreed due to the pressure from the minister and the chief prosecutor. Upon returning to the investigation team, Jin Sung told her not to be upset, as they now had a stronger weapon, Jinjin Hospital's Plan B. During his previous investigation, it turned out that Chris had invested in Jinjin Hospital. Chris, a chronic diabetes patient, had hacked Director Yu's computer to obtain Plan B. Jin Sung speculated that Chris had donated tens of billions of won to Jinjin Hospital, wanting them to find a suitable organ donor for him. Young-ju wondered how much clinical trial data Jinjin Hospital needed to find a matching donor for Chris. But Kai Young informed her that Jinjin Hospital provided free annual health checkups not only to teenagers but also to low-income individuals. Finding a match would be incredibly easy for them. After some analysis, Jin Sung decided to start investigating two young men on Chris's list. One was the chairman of the Healthcare and Welfare Department. He must have granted Jinjin Hospital numerous preferential conditions, making him a necessary target for Jin Sung's investigation. He sought out L. Sang-min, whose name was on the donor list. Afterward, he met with the organ transplant manager, Mr. K. Upon investigation, they discovered that both young men on the transplant list had undergone health checkups at Jinjin Hospital. However, they lacked evidence proving Mr. B had provided the information to Jinjin Hospital. Therefore, they decided to approach and interrogate Mr. B. Jin Sung visited Mr. B, informing him that Chief Kim had confessed to placing cash inside a box of wine and pastries as a bribe. The transplant manager also admitted to tampering with the heart transplant waiting list under duress from Mr. B. Jin Sung then proceeded to threaten and coax Mr. B. If he didn't cooperate, he could end up in prison alongside his son, Min Jae-yu. A worried Mr. B inquired about the benefits of cooperating, unaware that their conversation was being recorded by the police through a phone in Jin Sung's pocket. Meanwhile, Young Woon visited the doctor who had treated Jin Woo. He wanted to understand Jin Woo's actual condition at the time. The doctor explained that the craniotomy had been successful, and the prognosis for recovery was positive. However, for unknown reasons, an emergency alarm had sounded. The doctor, caught in the ensuing chaos, hadn't been able to thoroughly investigate, as emergencies often involve numerous variables. Young Woon then went to Jinjin Hospital's security room and retrieved the surveillance footage from Jin Woo's room. The scene then shifts to the courtroom. During Min Jae-yu's trial for multiple murders, the prosecutor outlines Min Jae-yu's crimes and requests the death penalty. The courtroom buzzes with discussion. Mr. B, seated nearby, looks at Jin Sung and nods. Young Woon then presents the charges against Kai Young, also requesting the death penalty. Observing this, Jin Sung discreetly texts Young Ju, confirming that Mr. B will testify. Elsewhere, Director Yu visits Chief Kim in detention. Chief Kim immediately apologizes for Kang's unauthorized confinement. Director Yu doesn't rebuke him, instead expressing her understanding of his concern for Yn-un. Chief Kim asks Director Yu whether he is trustworthy or close. Director Yu indicates that choosing between the two is difficult. Chief Kim muses that trust is more important. Distance can weaken affection, but not trust. The following day, Jin Woo's trial commences. The first witness is Dr. Chu, who confesses to being instructed by Chief Kim to monitor Jin Woo's health, frequently using checkups as a pretext, particularly regarding his heart condition. He owed Jinjin Hospital a favor due to a past medical incident. Chief Kim had claimed it was for clinical organ research, but it ultimately led to Jin Woo's tragic death. Dr. Chu expresses remorse, feeling he will never be able to atone for his actions. Young Ju then submits to the court Dr. Chu's monitoring records and the text messages luring Jin Woo to the beach. Next, Chief Kim is questioned. Young Ju presents a video of Chief Kim attacking Jin Woo. The video clearly shows Chief Kim as the assailant. This footage was captured by an eyewitness at the scene. The video shows Kim lying in wait for Jin Woo before attacking and killing him, clearly demonstrating premeditation. Young Ju then plays another video showing Chief Kim ordering his subordinates to kidnap Kang. She asks Chief Kim why he kidnapped Kai Young, questioning whether Kai Young was also intended as a heart donor for Young Woon. Chief Kim remains silent in the face of Young Ju's questioning. Young Ju pressed him, asking if both Jin Woo's murder and Kai Young's kidnapping were done to save Young Woon. Chief Kim finally admitted it. The next person questioned was Mary. Young Ju asked her why she recorded the agreement signing. Mary explained that Jinjin Hospital was an unreachable entity for an ordinary person. Even though she knew her son was innocent and had died tragically, a powerless mother like her couldn't do anything. The only thing she could do for her son was to record evidence of their crimes. Kai Young, also brought to court as a witness in the case, was questioned by Young Ju about the reason for the serial killings. Kai Young stated his motive was revenge against director Yu. He, Jin Woo, and Young Woon were half-brothers. Everyone shares one thing: time. No one can predict when they will die, but he and Jin Woo were different. To save his son Young Woon, director Yu had predetermined their death dates. Although director Yu sponsored poor people like him, cared for him, and treated him like a son, behind this kindness and care was a terrifying purpose. He pleaded with the court for a just ruling. Young Ju then began questioning Lee Sang-min. He had been paying for his own health checkups until Jinjin Hospital contacted him. They offered free checkups for the employed, and Young Ju pointed out that the checkup report included a mandatory organ screening. Normally, this wouldn't appear in a comprehensive checkup, but without their knowledge, they were listed as potential organ donors for wealthy individuals, including billionaire Chris, and he was the most suitable match on the list. Clearly, a massive conspiracy was at play. Immediately afterward, Young Ju called Young Woon as a witness. Young Woon explained why he became a witness. Although he knew his mother loved him very much, he was destined to live in pain afterward, so he told his mother to confess. Young Woon's testimony indirectly confirmed director Yu's actions. When Young Ju began questioning director Yu, he still denied the charges. So, Young Ju presented surveillance video from the hospital room the day before Jin Woo was declared brain dead. Everyone was stunned after hearing Young Ju's words. The defense attorney immediately objected, stating the video wasn't on the evidence list and shouldn't be admissible. The court adjourned to discuss the matter. It turned out that Young Woon had given the hospital room video to Jin Sung. After watching the video and discovering his mother had turned off Jin Woo's ventilator, he initially intended to discard it. But ultimately, he couldn't. He ended up calling his father. Chairman Father returned home to find Young Woon in anguish, filled with shame. Young Woon was unsure if his choice was right, but his father reassured him that children are allowed to be selfish with their parents and he shouldn't feel guilty. He and director Yu wouldn't resent anyone. This was their responsibility. He told Young Woon to hold on to his life and do what he felt was right. So, Young Woon gave the video to Jin Sung. His conscience had guided him, compelled him to do so. After the recess, the court accepted the video provided by the police as evidence. The video, showing director Yu deactivating Jin Woo's life support, was played in court. Faced with such irrefutable proof, director Yu finally confessed to murdering Jin Woo. Young Ju argued that no amount of wealth or status grants the right to take another's life. If the lives of ordinary people become playthings for the powerful, then the world is truly a living hell. Therefore, she requested the court to impose the highest penalty, the death sentence, on both Chairman Kim and director Yu. Director Yu also spoke, expressing deep remorse for Jin Woo and his family. She didn't ask for their forgiveness, knowing it was impossible to earn. She insisted that the time she spent with Kai Young, though plentiful, was genuine, not a pretense, because one's heart can't hold two opposing sentiments. Her only desire was to save her son, Young Woon. Even though she chose the wrong path, as a mother, she felt compelled to follow it. As long as it could save her son, she had no regrets about saving Young Woon this way. She was ready to accept the hellish torment that awaited her. In the end, the court sentenced both Chairman Kim and director Yu to life imprisonment for the murder of Jin Woo and 2 counts of malpractice. The scandal surrounding Jinjin Hospital spread to the political and judicial spheres, as the congressman who had accepted billions in bribes was arrested. A year passed. Director Yu, in prison, continued to receive weekly letters from Young Woon. She accepted them all but never read a single one. The movie ends here.